Let's take a walk down memory lane and look at our class of 2020. The Cub class of 2020 received 27 different bears from 5 different states, including Tennessee, Kentucky, Alabama, South Carolina, and Louisiana. Our first bear of 2020 was bear 299, Balthazar, also known as King B. He arrived to us, as you can see, in early January, so he was just a little bit before his first birthday, an almost yearling bear, and he came from the state of Louisiana. They had actually been trying to capture Balthazar since before Christmas, but he didn't actually get captured and brought to our facility until January 9th, so he was eluding capture. He was only about 14 pounds as an almost yearling bear, so very small, very malnourished. He did thrive and grow to be a big, beautiful bear and was released successfully back into the wild of Louisiana, weighing 67.8 pounds. And something unique about Balthazar is that he was from the Louisiana coastal population of black bears, which is the most genetically unique population of black bears in Louisiana. The second bear and the only neonate cub to come to our facility in 2020 is bear 300, Ramsay bear. Ramsay bear came to us from the state of Kentucky. He kind of had an unfortunate run-in and beginning to his life when wildlife officers were conducting a routine den check on one of their collared female bears in the wild. When they arrived to her den, they found that the mother had left the den. There was one deceased cub and Ramsay bear left alone. They did wait a little while to see if Mama Bear would return, but it was much too cold. The risk of hypothermia and starvation started to set in, so unfortunately they did have to intervene and rescue little Ramsay Bear. He came to ABR's facility, and he's actually named after the veterinarian at UTCVM that saw him, Dr. Ed Ramsay. It was Dr. Ramsay's last day of duty before his retirement. He's helped us with many, many bears throughout the years, and Bear 300 Ramsay was his last official patient. So in recognition of Dr. Ramsay, we named this young cub Ramsay after him. He weighed just about 2 pounds, and he was a very good eater. And you can see there, just under a week later, we actually were able to get him fostered out to a wild mother sow in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. We do always try to return the bears back to not only the state where they came from, but usually the exact location where they came from. In this instance, for Ramsay, it would benefit him much more to be with a wild mama bear rather than curators at such a young age. We do try our best, but the decision was made to foster him to a Tennessee mama, as foster mothers can be far and few between. Up next, we have our little cow bear, bear 301, Ferdinand. He also came from the state of Kentucky in Wayne County. He was found orphaned and all alone out in a cow pasture, about 6 pounds. He was clinging to a tree, and you can see there in the picture on the right, there's cows that came up to visit him in that cattle pasture. The cub was very, very weak and dehydrated. When he arrived, everything about him was pretty poor condition. He had dehydration, hypoglycemia, very malnourished, and a very severe tick infestation as well. Ferdinand did actually spend the first night in the ICU, and then he arrived to our facility at ABR. He bonded with many cubs during his stay, and you can see he was released at the beginning of 2021 on January 7th back to his home state of Kentucky, and he weighed 83 pounds at his release. Bear 302, Dumplin, arrived to ABR with his sister Tweetsie, who we'll get to next. They arrived to us from Carter County, Tennessee. We have a huge thank you out to Wynwood Wildlife Rehabilitation. The cubs first went to them for some warming and fluids before being brought to our facility to help tide them over, and they were a huge help for us in getting 302 Dumplin and 303 Tweetsie back safely to our facility. At his release, Dumplin was 86.6 pounds, and he was released successfully in early 2021. .303 Tweetsie is Dumplin's sister, so she did arrive. You can see there from the admit date 2 days after him. She was a little bit more hesitant to go into the trap, a little bit more difficult to trap, although she finally did give in. She was very hungry, very dehydrated, and that did force her down from the tree. Trees are black bear's safe spot, so she was probably very scared and just felt safer up there. But she did eventually come down, was able to be trapped successfully. Again, thank you to that Wynwood Wildlife Rehabilitation for fluids, warming her up before she could come back to ABR and join her brother. She was about 6.5 pounds at her arrival, and when she was released, she was a very healthy 72.4 pounds and was also released back into the wild alongside her brother. Bear 304 Sparks actually arrived to us so small that people who reported seeing him hanging around the Cades Cove campground in the national park thought he was a cub. So he was only about 18 pounds, though he was a yearling. So he was rescued from the National Park Service Rangers, captured, brought to ABR, and he did really grow into not only a big, strong, and healthy bear, but also a very playful and entertaining bear. If you followed us during this time period, a lot of us remember Sparks for being the entertainer. He especially loved the hanging blue ball that we have in a lot of the enclosures, and he would play with that by himself for hours at a time. He loved entertaining himself with that. He grew, like I said, into a very strong, big, healthy black bear and was released back into Great Smoky Mountains National Park at 81 pounds. Next up, we have what I like to call the bird sisters. We have bears 305 Raven and 306 Chickadee. These two female cubs came from Sevier County, Tennessee. We aren't 100% sure what happened to their mother. There was reports of a bear family with two cubs being spotted. There were reports of gunshots heard, and after that, there was no more mother bear seen, but there were two young cubs, which were Raven and Chickadee, seen without a mother for a period of time. Long enough period of time that the decision was made to intervene, so they did come to our facility at ABR. They arrived weighing 12 pounds and 11.2 pounds, and they were very healthy. Mom was doing a very good job. However, bear 306 Chickadee did have ringworm, and so upon their arrival, the decision was made to keep them separate, treat Chickadee for her ringworm before reuniting the sisters. They were kept in our Red Roof Recovery Center. However, the sisters had other ideas, and causing them to be separated from one another was just too much stress on them. It was very visibly stressful. We had pacing, we had crying going on, and we always want to minimize any of the stress that we have. So we did reunite the two sisters, and we ended up just treating both of them for ringworm. We did treat 305 for ringworm, though she didn't have it at the time. But it's very, very contagious, as I'm sure a lot of you know. So on the safe side, we treated them both, and then they were released out into a wild enclosure where they resumed their stay with us, and they were released in November of that same year in 2020, weighing 92 and 89.8 pounds. In early June of 2020, we received a triplet sibling pair, Bear 307 Firefly, 308 Flicker, and 309 Downy. These three small cubs were orphaned after their mother was unfortunately shot after approaching a resident in Sevier County, Tennessee. The cubs arrived weighing 16.5, 17.6, and 13.2 pounds. They did arrive in good health. Mama was doing a good job with them up until, unfortunately, she ran into some humans and came into that human-bear conflict. They did end up joining the two bird sisters, Raven and Chickadee, out into a wild enclosure where they finished out their stay at ABR and were released in November of that same year, weighing 91 pounds, 106 pounds, and 78 pounds. Next up, we have Bear 310, Sweet Chicory Bear. Not all bear stories at a bear rescue are happy or have a happy ending, and that is what Chicory's story is. So she was from the state of Louisiana. She was about 4 months old when she arrived to us and weighed just about 10 pounds. We don't know what happened to her mother, but she did get to arrive to ABR on our Bear Force One airplane. After a few weeks into her stay, we did observe a pretty prominent limp, and after some future tests at UTCVM, it was discovered that she had vascular necrosis of her femoral bone, and the difficult decision was made to unfortunately euthanize her. The number of surgeries that she would have required, not only at the time, but also into her future as she grew, would have left her not only disabled, but unreleasable from our facility. So the decision was made between the veterinarians and the Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries to unfortunately euthanize her. Bear 311, Sunflower, was a very special bear in 2020. She arrived around mid-June, so June 19th of 2020. She came to us from the state of South Carolina, and she also arrived to us using our Bear Force One airplane. So her and her bear family were in the state of South Carolina when they were chased up a tree by dogs. The rest of the family came down from the trees and went on their way, but Sunflower was too scared to leave and actually was left behind, unfortunately, by her family. So she was rescued, brought to ABR. She had a really unique missing ear from an old healed injury. So you can see in that picture, her left ear is almost completely gone, but it was determined that it was from an old injury, one that had already healed over. And when she arrived to us, she was about 20 pounds. She was in pretty good health, and we named her Sunflower after a famous work of art by an artist who also had only one ear. She was released back into the state of South Carolina in November of 2020, weighing 97 pounds, and she also did win our 2020 Chubby Cubby Chunk Down competition. She was our Chunkian of 2020, and as you can see, she was 97 pounds at release, so she wasn't our heaviest bear by weight, but that competition is all ran by votes from you all on how the chunkiest cub looks on our cameras, and the camera did add quite a few pounds. She looked pretty round and pretty chunky, and she was a very healthy female bear upon her release. Bear 312, Whisper, is another unfortunate, not a good ending for this cub. She was about 5 months old, hit by a car in the state of Alabama, and she was being transported to ABR when it was decided that they weren't sure she was going to make it. She had some pretty severe injuries after being hit by that vehicle in Cherokee County, which is in northern part of the state in Alabama. So she was actually diverted instead to our usual UTCVM veterinary hospital. She was taken to a very qualified vet in Chattanooga, where she had a surgery done. She actually had surgery done to repair a split mandible after being hit by the car, but unfortunately that wasn't enough, and she did end up having to be euthanized. She did not actually ever make it to our facility. Bear 313, Sassafras, was a cub of the year, about 5 months old, that came to us from Irwin, Tennessee. She was observed alone for about 4 days without a mama bear, so the decision was made to intervene. She was about 10 pounds at her arrival, and she was very healthy at her appointment at UTCVM. She's also the first and only bear that's ever gotten to ride in Curator Janet's camper trailer. You can see that on the bottom right there. And Sassafras did grow into a beautiful bear, and she also lived up to her name. If you followed us during that time, you'll know that Sassafras was one of our smaller residents in 2020, but she was sassy. She was very mighty, and she often could be found picking play fights, and wrestling with bears a lot larger than her in her wild enclosure. She was very playful, very feisty, and she ended up weighing 75 pounds upon her release. Bear 314, Harlan, came to us from the state of Kentucky. He came from Harlan County, Kentucky, and he was a pretty small bear upon arrival, a small cub of the year. Bear 314, Harlan, arrived to us from Harlan County, Kentucky. He was about 13 pounds at his arrival to ABR, a male cub, and he was small, but he was very fearless, very feisty. He was in good health, just a little anemic, and he had a couple ticks as well. He soon bonded very closely with Bear 301, Ferdinand, and the other cubs in his wild enclosure. He was successfully released back into the wild in February of 2021, weighing 97 pounds. Bear 315, Clover, arrived to us in July of 2020. Upon her arrival, she was in fairly good health. She was about 6 pounds at her arrival, and she had been seen for some time without her mother. She was from Harlan County, Kentucky, but she was not related to Harlan Bear in any way. She was a very special bear. If you followed us during this time, you know that Clover was known for her extremely friendly nature with other bears. She had this very maternal instinct from a very young age as a cub, and she also struggled on and off with a lame front paw, which led her to go to lots of vet appointments at UTCVM. And caused her to be in confinement for long periods of time. However, she was very, very chill, if you will, and she handled that confinement extremely well. She was released successfully back into the wilds of Kentucky at 75.5 pounds. And she did make a lot of friends while at ABR. Again, she had that really nurturing, friendly, and curious nature with all other bears that she came across while at our facility. Bear 316, Mulberry, was a yearling bear that arrived to us actually the same day as Clover arrived. He was a male yearling observed in Wares Valley, Tennessee. He seemed to be struggling after a family breakup. He was a little underweight. We oftentimes will get yearling bears who, after their family breakup in the spring, are having a difficult time out on their own, finding the right food sources, and surviving and thriving like they were with their bear families. He was joined by 2 other yearlings during his time here at ABR, and he was released successfully back into the wild in November of 2020, weighing 122 pounds. Bear 317, Boomer, came in late July of 2020. He came from a bear family that had actually been relocated in Cott County, Tennessee. Unfortunately, he escaped from this relocation, and the efforts to trap him and reunite him somehow with his relocated family was just not possible. He was very healthy, about 27.2 pounds, but just a little too young to be out on his own yet. So he did come to ABR. He made a lot of friends with the other cubbies here at our facility and was released back into the wild of November of 2020, weighing 94 pounds. Bear 318, Marmalade, had a very rough start to her life. She was the lone survivor of her bear family when her mother and 3 other siblings, so her mom had 4 cubs total. Her mom and 3 siblings were unfortunately killed after getting hit by an automobile in Letcher County, Kentucky. She was about 10 pounds at her arrival, and as you could imagine, came very, very shocked and scared to ABR. She did also experience a severe episode of hypoglycemia shortly after her arrival. It was noticed on cameras that she was very rigid in the Hartley house. Curator Janet and her quick thinking got to her rescue and drove her to UTCVM, where she was able to thankfully recover. And Curator Janet actually made the news because on their way to UTCVM, she stopped to try and up her blood sugar by getting some honey at the grocery store. There was a huge storm at the time, and Curator Janet was banging on the door of this store that had just closed to get some honey, and the store employees were kind enough to help her out with that. And so Marmalade did survive that episode. She did grow to be 52 pounds, which was our smallest bear that year in 2020. She was always a very small bear. We think she might have been the runt of the litter of those 3 other siblings, but 52 pounds at her release was more than healthy to be released back into the wild. We did also oftentimes refer to her as the tree bear because while all black bears do enjoy being up in the trees, Marmalade seemed to especially enjoy her alone time. Almost always high up in a tree. She was released successfully back into the state of Kentucky in February of 2021. Bear 319, Augustus, was another yearling bear that came to us. He was about 29 pounds upon his arrival, and he came from Clingman's Dome Road in Great Smoky Mountains National Park. At first, he was kind of standoffish and a loner, but eventually he did join forces with the other 2 yearlings he was housed with here at ABR, and he was released successfully back into the national park, weighing 89 pounds. Bear 320, Dahlia bear, also was a yearling bear. She was described as a small cub based on how small she looked when she was found in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. She was about 37 pounds upon her arrival, and she did eventually join up with Mulberry and Augustus bear out in the wild enclosure. She was only with us for about 3 months before being released back into the wild at 111 pounds. Next up, we have our 3 triplet siblings that coined the name the Rainbow Triplets. We have bears 321 Indigo, 322 Juniper, and their sister 323 Lavender. They arrived to us in August of 2020 from Sevier County, Tennessee. Unfortunately, their mother, as well as some of the other stories from this year, ran into a human-bear conflict. She had been shot by a landowner after being accustomed to getting access to their food in human areas. The cubs arrived in very good health. They weighed 33 pounds, and 27 pounds. Because of their name, again, they were coined the Rainbow Triplets, and they were released successfully in January of 2021, weighing 122 pounds, 123.8, and 102.2 pounds. Bear 324, Aralia, came to us as an orphaned cub of the year from Sullivan County, Tennessee. She was about 26 pounds. And similar to Boomer, she eluded capture from a relocation effort of her mother and sibling. Aralia was very bonded to Clover. Towards the end of her stay, it was noticed that she had some hair loss, some patchy fur going on. So she was kept for a little bit longer to get retreated again for parasites and worms, which did end up helping her hair loss. But during that time, she was kept in the Hartley house, where our bear 315 Clover was being kept in confinement for her lame paw. And they made the best of friends. Clover, of course, with her nurturing personality, sort of approached Aralia first, and they became good cubby friends for their extended stay until February of 2021. Aralia was released weighing 79 pounds back into the wild, and Aralia is named after the scientific name Aralia spinosa, which is a native shrub that you all might know as the devil's walking stick. This shrub has berries that are a favorite for birds, but also black bears. And our last bear of 2020 was Bear 325 Sycamore. He unfortunately did not have as happy of an ending as some of the others. He came to us from Carter County, Tennessee. He was actually bedded down in a ditch at a construction site, and when he arrived to us, he was about 40 pounds, very, very lethargic, not moving. He was extremely sick. From the moment he came to us, he fought really hard, but again, he was just very sick. He had severe anemia. He came to us with severe jaundice, and he fought hard for a little over a month. At one time, he had fluid in his lungs, and he was put into the ICU oxygen chamber at UTCVM. But unfortunately, the decision was made to humanely euthanize him, as veterinarians did not see him having any room for improvement or getting better. And that concludes our Cub class of 2020. I hope you enjoyed this walk down memory lane.